Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Financial Aid Podcast. With again another segment of the Military Mondays, where the freakishly handsome host, Matt Dillingham, get to sponsor, feature, promote my fellow veterans because shit, I was in the Marine Corps. I can do what I want because I'm a veteran, and so are you. You know what I mean, Joseph? So, anyways, with that being said, before we get into today's segment, some of you may know, some of you may not know, I do help out people with other things besides hosting on my podcast, like financial literacy, some stuff around business funding, credit, you know what I mean? Life coaching too as well. If you like help in any one of those areas, you can book a call with me directly by simply going to speakwithmatt.info. No need to put in the www, just speakwithmatt.info. You write my calendar, we'll book a 30-minute Zoom call, and we'll go from there. And this episode is sponsored by Warranted. You can't see because in the background, one of the co-authors of the book was also done by another veteran, and any purchase you make goes to help out proceeds go to help out other veteran organizations. With that being said, I'd like to introduce my guest of Joseph Bray and correct me if I'm wrong, the Full Wave Group.
Yes, sir. Full wave.
Cool. All right, man. So let's get right into it. What branch you serve and how long?
I was in the Army, active duty, a little over 8 years, thanks to stop loss. But yeah, it was.
Oh, you got stop lost?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
That happened. What was it, the height of the Iraq War? Like, yeah, I'm done. You're like, nope.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't ever
talk about that.
Explain that little small text in the contract at all.
Or when you're getting recruited, you'll be part of the military. You'll travel. When this goes to all branches, you'll be in the military. You'll be hireable. You can do this, and you're like, great. And there's stop loss. What recruits we need if you're trying to leave? We'll use on you. What did you just say? I said, crab apples. Crab apples. Don't worry, you'll learn about it in the military. It's crab apples. Okay, let me sign away.
Yay. Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much.
You got a crab apple.
Yeah. They always you get to travel and see the world. They don't tell you it's not all the great places, but you get to travel and see amazing things.
To some shitty places, you'll get paid. And then there's more. Oh, okay.
Well, there's that.
Yeah. Oh, stop loss. That you must have been when that happened, were you like upset at the time, or you're like great, or were you cool with it? Like what were your thoughts and feelings at that moment in time?
Well, it is what it is, and well, what am I going to do to stop that or reverse it? You can't. So accept it and move on. It's just part of the game. So, meh.
Damn. Well, you're here now, so it worked out. And before we started talking,
at least it's with pay. So it's like,
yeah, the military, as much as it can suck at times, it has moments, benefits where it will be like, you know what? I know it sucked. Let me make it up in pay or something. You're like, all right, I can live with it. Doesn't happen all the time, but it has its moments. I'll tell you that. It does. But those moments are like so random,
Yeah, I was responding to, I don't know, it was a post. It's like, hey, what kind of skill sets do you bring from the military as a vet into the civilian world? And the most politically correct way I say it is, well, I thrive in a chaotic environment. We all know how to thrive in very chaotic environments, whether it's how the hell did this guy get promoted? Or, oh, this is a communication shit show, or, all of the above. Chaotic environments. We thrive.
Yep. Because it's always like we're doing this and then change the plans. We gotta do this. Like, all right, we're doing this. This goes away. Change the plans. Okay, and like you really don't have a say. You can complain about it. Some people do not have, but it's like it's just what it is.
Right.
Nature of the beast or the game, whatever works for you, go for it. So then you did your time there. You got stop loss. After that, well, what happened after that? Did you go right into entrepreneurship, or was it, or what did you
No,
do
not really. I had one of the things I capitalized on was the best advice I ever got back then was mentorship. Get a mentor, someone who's, you know, done fairly well for themselves. Lean on that. And if I was your age, I would do this. And so one of the best advice I got, which was go to school while you're active because it's free.
Mm,
Also, it only takes an O3 or above to sign off for you to go to class during, you know, regular, I guess, scheduled times. But so the beauty of it was I was an E4 then when I was going into this and King of the Sham Shield. Well, if I can get out of work and go sit in class, I don't have to be down the motorhole, kicking around drip cans. So here's an excuse to get out of work. Well, I did, and I got my mechanical engineering degree, and I came out, and it's like, well, I could poke a bomb with a stick, yeah, I could shoot a dude in the face really far away, and
yeah.
I got this engineering degree. I don't want to be a cop, so let's see what this does. And I fell into my field and started off at I worked for quite a bit. Same thing. Picked up another mentor. It's like, look, if I was your age, instead of working for somebody, go contract and you get to work on all kinds of cool stuff. You make more money. And I was like, well, this guy's got 11 books published, and if I do half of this crap, I should be all right. So I did.
Right.
I broke out, went contract, and worked on a lot of cool stuff. And finally, about 3 years ago, I was in a crossroads in my life of I had an offer to take over as a CTO for a company, and I just came out of a toxic relationship of work. I was a principal engineer for a space tourism company, and I just got tired of working for bad management. And every day I would come home and complain about something. Like,
Mm,
and my wife said, "Look, you've been talking forever about starting your own company and doing your own thing. If you decide to take this CTO's job, I don't want to hear you come home complaining never again." She goes, "I'm tired of you basically bitching about work." She goes, "R, start up your own thing. So if you have any complaints, it's no one else's fault but your own." And for years, I've always had an excuse of, well, the economy's not good. Well, I got to have all this startup capital. Or how am I going to? I don't really trust people on the work side. So how am I supposed to hire employees and this, that, and the other? That was, I guess, the epiphany moment, that little push I needed, because the biggest thing is going into that unknown of starting a company is, well, I got bills.
right.
Like, I live in California. Houses are
Oof.
not cheap. So
No.
it's one of those, like, you have that initial, not really a fear, but it's that doubt of, will I make enough to cover all of my bills and move forward? I
Right.
know my dad was a business owner for a lot of years, and I saw those struggles, and I was like, I don't know if I want to deal with the stress or the headaches or anything else, or listen to my mom complain. Well, when are we going to get paid next? So that was the push I needed personally. And then I started looking into, well, what does it take to start a business? Because I'm an engineer. I'm not a business owner. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I Googled. I mean, that that's I did a hardcore Google dive into what it takes for as far as incorporating a business and where to incorporate and how to and all the stuff it's needed. And then I was like, well, I can do all this stuff and filings and everything for free, and it's going to be complicated and take a long time, or I could pay this dude over here $800 and they do everything for me. So I paid $800.
Right.
And then I looked at it as, all right, well, I know I was going to go the service route and not actually develop a product. Um, my line of work in aerospace and space, there's a lot of hurdles that come with developing a part or piece or anything and try to get that on an aircraft or into a program. And there's all these qualifications, all this shit you got to have. And so I was like, well, I don't want to do that. And my business model really became, what are the headaches I have had over the last 20 years that I wish someone was out there that could have solved it?
Mm.
And that's where I literally started my company is hold my beer. Someone says it can't be done, and I've known of an application that worked. It might not be in this particular industry, but I've seen the results because of past contract life. Instead of staying with just aerospace, I worked in nukes. I worked in oil and gas. I've worked on race car shit. I worked on, all these different industries, hence mentor. Um, and I learned all these different applications and techniques, all because you haven't seen it here doesn't mean it does not exist.
Right.
So I started doing that. And I leaned on my connections I've had over the years of people I know working with various space agencies and companies. And I was like, hey, man, you remember when we had that problem with blah, 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 blah? You still having that problem? I know the answer is yes. I know a way to fix that. Hold my beer. Let me
Yeah.
help you out. And then next thing you know, within 14 months, I'm a NASA sole source prime. I'm doing work for Lockheed and Northrop, and we're working on everything from Roman Space Telescope to ISS to Gateway Space Station, which is the first space station to orbit the moon for lunar colonization. Artemis Orion program, and we're now currently working on the Mars sample return mission. Just
Wow.
solving problems. That's what I do. Yeah. So I know being an auditor and stuff and working for various companies, what's needed to be a supplier to these programs or to these companies. And instead of going and chasing the dollar first, I focused on getting what certifications were needed in place,
Mhm.
get my program together, get my quality management system. And you can really apply this to any industry. I would go on like, I knew at some point I want to do work for like Boeing projects. And so I would go to Boeing's website page, go to become a supplier. They have their checklist there. And then I look at that checklist and go, do I have this stuff? Yes or no? Does it apply to me? One. But if it does apply to me, do I have it? No. Okay, well, I need that. And then I go to Northrop's page. I go through all these OEMs and go find the common requirement. That's what I focus on first. Because if I get
Mhm.
that done, I can then spread my business and go to multiple companies. It takes about 6 months, 7 months or so. And then I just burned down the checklist, got everything in place, and then just started submitting on bids. That's it. But
Sounds so simple. So I can do this. I can start this today and be where you're at tomorrow. Just kidding. Ah,
well, my biggest challenge was this is not something I planned years in advance and did capital raise or anything else. I was like, well, I know this stuff isn't cheap. Like, anything you're doing with space or defense applications, you have to have all this like your data. How do you protect your data and all this stuff? Well, I was looking at AWS and I was like, dude, this is like $1,300 a month. Fuck. But then I just looked at the DCMA requirement. And I was like, it just says I have to have two-factor authentication. I have to have, you know, two locations of data. Well, it doesn't say what form. It just says you have to be able to store your data in two places, external hard drive and a server. That's two places. So what I did is I went down to Staples, bought a bunch of freaking hard drives. And when we would do work on a customer site, we'd leave one there. And then I back up that data. I built my own server. Went on there, it's like, what is the best desktop server bang for buck? Google search, Synology pops up, $1,800 for the server. And then bought all the hard drives, put it in myself, plug and play. I'm not an IT guy. And voila, I now have my own standalone server. So the biggest cost of my startup is because of ITAR. We have to have an ITAR certification, which is basically international trades of arms requirements. So anything that could be used as a military system or could be used in the future or is currently being used The military, State Department really slaps a freaking thing on here and goes, you can't export this to a foreign country. That's 2,700 bucks. That was probably my biggest startup cost. Everything
Mhm.
else was like, well, I don't have 4 grand to build a server, but I do qualify for a firm. It's one of those things where I'm like, it's $100 a month. That's way cheaper. Now I see the cost as $100 a month versus 1,300 for an outside service. So I started my company a little less than 5 grand. Not bad. I mean, QuickBooks, 100 something dollars a month. I mean, I just added it all up and go, okay, I know now I need to make more than 5 grand a month.
Mhm.
If I'm doing that, I've covered my startup costs and I know this is the basic bare nothing costs I need to have in place. So my first contract I went off of or shot for was to make sure I got more than 5 grand a month on it.
Right.
$60,000. That's not a very big ask in the aerospace field. I mean, so I took the approach of I'm not going to go after these giant, huge fish. I'm not even capable of that right now.
Yeah.
So, how do I get into the market? Well, we've all worked with people we know in our fields forever. We've all worked in companies and saw the headaches and the problems they were having. As long as you didn't drop some thermite on that bridge when you left working there, you have a decent relationship. You can
Yeah.
come back and go, hey, remember when I worked here and all this stuff and these problems? I can fix that problem. You already know how I work, unless you're fired, that's a little different. But most of us do move on during our careers for bigger and better things. And as long as you have that, you already have a network to reach out to. Here's your starting base. Coworkers, people you've been friends with that are also in this stuff. We all sit there like, hey, dude, how's it going? Oh man, how's work life? Well, we're still dealing with these problems. Hey,
Right.
there's your in. It's that's how I did it. I just did it with, hey, a lot of the guys I've worked with on several jobs and contracts, I reached out to them and go, hey man, what kind of problems y'all having? You already know my work ethic. I don't have to be vetted because I've already vetted myself. Two, um, a lot of companies I've worked for in the past are my customers now because I've maintained a good relationship with them. But two, I already know the internal workings. So as a vendor coming in, there's not a learning curve.
Right.
I took that approach and then I just kind of built it from there. It's a, f- I'm not saying it's feast or famine, but I look at my growth as a company or revenue streams over a year, not by the month, because starting out, first 5 years is always the biggest challenge. Yada, yada. It's like a marriage. First year is the hardest. Um, every year's hard. So same thing with the happiness curve, right? It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. Same thing with your revenue stream. So instead of focusing on that, hyper focusing, going, oh man, we did great last month. Wow, come I got no business going out. You're
Mhm.
new. Still people don't know about you. But if you set a target and go by the end of the year, I need to make X amount. My original goal was when I started this company, my goal was to meet the salary that I was making or do better. I'm not going in here day one going, oh, I'm going to make $3 million this year.
Right.
Wrong. No, I left a high paying job. Uh, so I also know to keep this going. I need to keep her happy. So I left at 220 a year. My goal was like, all right, my first year, I need to make around 220.
Right.
So my first year I cleared about 140. Next year 370, we're already busting the mill. So it's there is a growth rate, and that's my take home, not the revenue streams much more.
Mhm.
The things I always tell people too, when starting a company, the first thing you look at is research the difference between your profit margins on a product versus a service or vice versa. I know by doing plenty of market research that for a service company, a very successful, a good one only clears 25% profit,
Mm.
22 to 25. For a products company, and it doesn't matter if it's a toilet seat or an aircraft, 10%. If you're making 10% profit, you're doing very good. So that helps you with the perspective of, man, almost all of my income coming in is cost. Like I'm only getting like 20% of this. Well, a very successful company is making 20, is they say is 25, you're at 20. Could you do a little better? Sure, but you're
Yeah.
actually on par. So some of that is looking at because you're going to get the negative Nancy thoughts of, I'm not
Yeah.
making as much as I thought I would, or stuff's just too expensive, or this, that, and the other. Like my wife, I love her to death, but she's like, how come we're only making 30%? 30%'s good. I
Yeah.
was like,
This is not what it's. Let me ask you this. So we say from you did a lot of reverse engineering when you got into this, and you kind of looked at, okay, is this like you put the pieces of the puzzle, you put the pieces of the puzzle together, and like thought of it methodically. There's this part I need, and look at this, and there's this checklist, and you're like, oh, okay. So if I do X, Y, and Z, I'll be fine. Basically, it's and then you said, okay,
well,
it's for that, and then get there, and then we look at it again, and then aim. You know what I mean?
the,
Does that make sense?
the engineering mindset is you want to create a baseline, which in this case would be your strategy, and go, that way, if you do this in steps and not just try to take on everything all at one time, one, it's a lot easier. Two, I've established my baseline of I did this, the result was this. So now I can start forming a metric. I
Right,
put in X amount of money here. This is what my return should be. So
right,
now you can drop that down and go should be and is. Well, it should be this. It is this. Where in these steps did I overperform, underperform, or what could I change? So that way, going back, looking back, I can also too say, well, if I adjust this one thing, how much does that impact? What is the value of that?
yeah,
Whether it's time, whether it's money, the thing about going into a business or having a business is time is money. You have to put a dollar amount on that time.
correct,
If you think about a salary, you get compensated X amount of money per hour. Same thing with a business. If I'm going in looking at this on the labor code, well, all right, I'm bidding this to be X amount of labor hours, which should equivalent to X amount of money. Is this enough? If it's not, you need to adjust your rates. But you also need to know what your competitors' rates are too. Do the research and go, am I high? Am I low? I'm not the most expensive. I'm not the cheapest. I put it right in the middle. So that also gives me the power to leverage. I have a customer who doesn't have a huge budget. I have one over here who does. I can compensate. I can take a hit over here to help these guys. Because at the end of the day, I'm just here to fix problems. I enjoy that. I'm a fixer. So if someone doesn't have the money to do this, or I can take a hit, lower that cost, and compensate it over here. It's keeping that balance. So that also gives you the opportunity to open up your market. I can help the smaller guy and take a hit and apply discounts because I'm going to make it up on the long run on these larger contracts.
right,
So some of that is scaling. At the same time, I am in this to make money. So, but as long as I'm maintaining on average across the board of my customers of a 25% or greater profit margin, I'm good. It's you got to be able to leverage that flexibility.
right,
If you're hard set and you're firm and this is all I charge and this is all I'm ever going to charge, you're going to screw yourself. You're not, it's not a sustainable business. Yeah, it's we always heard in the military, situation dictates.
Situation awareness, the Marine Corps, it's Semper Gumby, always
And
flexible.
right, stay frosty. There's those things where
Right,
you're just taking that same application and applying it to something else. Like
right.
people ask me all the time, how'd you figure this out? I'm like, I don't redesign the wheel to change a lug nut.
No, I follow the instructions.
In some cases, I write the instructions, and when I do write those instructions, I don't. I have one of my first industry standards getting published, and it's really cool because I'm like, hey, I can make a change at an industry level. But I also wrote it to where it could be comprehended with third grade English.
Right,
I'm not putting a ton of fluff and big freaking words. The whole point of this, when writing a specification, is to make it to where the least experienced guy can comprehend it. Mainly because I don't want that dude to ask me questions 900 times and then throw me off work because now I'm behind.
right.
Read it.
Simple.
And it's so there's the biggest advice I give people at the time is one, before you do it, establish what is the need in the market you're trying to go after. What is the most common problem? You might not have come with the best solution, but you're coming with a solution in a land of none.
Right,
The thing is, too, is and the aerospace pushes on it a lot is continuous improvement. You're even on the product side. I have a products group. The first revision that you put out on design is not going to be the best. It won't be, but you do need to have stuff in place to continuously improve. Now, that
right,
doesn't mean you have to revamp and change your entire business, but you do need to look back periodically, whether it's by quarter, by semi-annual, or by a year, and go, this is what we've done so far. How can we improve one thing? If you can improve one step in your process, it's atomic change. If you make a change and improve something at the smallest level, you will greatly it will literally stack up and snowball further down you go.
right,
I do this at least once a month. Just go through and look at the books, or I'll go look at just one thing. Well, what did we learn? We should swap our external hard drives to solid states because dudes over here at this site dropped them a couple times, and yeah, we had to recover all that data. That was a pain in the butt. How do we keep from doing that again? Because it's going to happen again. It's those little things, those little quirks. If you
right.
do this and get this mentality from day one, your life is so much easier than when something does happen at day 390, 392. That's a big one. It's a huge one because a lot of companies know this and they preach all this stuff. They just don't do it. And those of us who have excelled, we just apply the crap we're taught. It's that's the thing is breaking the industry norms is it has its own challenges. I've had to change cultures and it's a very uphill battle.
Yeah,
It can be done. Sometimes assess the problem that you're facing and go, is this even worth tackling? I mean, it's there's still some things in my industry I want to change. I know I'm not capable of doing that right this moment, but it's
right,
still there. Some things you got to let, it's going to have to deal, accept it, you know, get to a point where you can make that change. But that's the biggest thing. You got to go in there with the mentality. It doesn't matter if it's a product or a service. Continuous improvement is huge. You have to reevaluate yourself every so often. And that's really the purpose of customer satisfaction surveys and all that crap. Like, how are we doing? Well, you have to actually read those. Some of them, you're going to get a bunch of Karens just going to complain. No one's ever going to be happy. It
right,
is what it is. But if if you start doing trend analysis, go, here is a common complaint, not really a complaint or a suggestion for improvement that I've seen across the board in about 60% of these surveys, there's your key identifier of what can I change or make better. Um, Employees, I pay that route, finding employees, I look for very good ones. I establish very early on, like all the way down to the offer letter, what is expected. Just like military side, this is what expected of you to do this. It's also in there. If you do not do your job, you are gone. This is at will employment. So you meet this standard. I'm bringing you in because I know you meet the standard. You either do it or you don't.
Right.
It's not that hard. Um, I don't have a lot of any really retention problems because I pay my employees what I would have wanted to be paid to do this work.
Right.
I far exceed market standards by 30%. So if my employees are paid very well, they work the schedule they want, I promote work-life balance to the point where I establish my times and you have X amount of days to get this done. It's already 20% more than what you really need to get this done because I've done this myself.
Right.
Literally, when I start a project, I will go and do it myself and set everything up. Here's the equipment, all the way down to there's the plug you're using to plug in this drop cord.
Yep.
The other reason I do that as the owner side is I don't want somebody to call me go, I can't do this. Mm, I know you can.
Right.
So to keep from doing that, I will never ask someone to do something I won't do myself. So I set these jobs up to go, you have 12 days to do this task. If you want to knock out 12, 14-hour days, get it done in three and coast the remainders, hey, more power to you. You're getting
Right.
paid the same. I pay by job.
Right.
So if you want to do the bare minimum and go in there and coast it out, still meet deadline, I don't really care. You make your schedule. So if I'm able to make my own schedule, I'm paid more than my other colleagues in my field. I Why would you leave?
Unless you want to do something different. That pretty much would be it. It's like, I have an opportunity to choose to go after my dream. Okay, cool, man. Do
Hey,
you?
I am more for that. I tell my employees, if you find something that's going to professionally develop you and move you on to greater things, I, it sucks that you're leaving, but at the same time, I, I'm proud of you. Hey, man, at least I was able to be that step to put you in that direction. I've worked for plenty of people where it's like, hey, I'm going to drop a notice because I'm moving to this to go in a better job, and then they get shit on for 2 weeks until they leave because it's like, oh, you're leaving us, you're dead to us now, and it's like, dude, this guy's
Yeah.
stepping into a director's slot, and I was like, you should be congratulating, going,
Yeah.
hey, lift us up, because what's going to happen is when that employee leaves, he knows he's leaving a gap. If you have people you've actually treated with respect and gave them a job that they actually enjoy working, you think they're not going to give a referral? Hey, man, you should go work with these guys. I know they need a slot. This dude helped me out. So I don't have any issues with recruiting.
Yeah.
I have guys hitting me up all the time like, hey, man, you need any current guys? Hey, you need an x-ray tech? Hey, you need this? Because I'm kind of open right now and I heard you're pretty kick-ass to work for.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I'm kind of a dick to work for because I'm like, yo, are you going to finish this sometime? I give you all the rope in the world to hang yourself.
Truthful statement.
I just saying, like, I just give you a timeline and I ask, what are you getting done? I'm going to get this and this and this done. When will it be done? Thursday. Cool. You reach out to me if you need something. My job is to facilitate whether you need people or equipment or supplies. Other than that, I hired you to do this job. You are very good at your job, so do your job.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and hound you every day or ask you what's going on. I'm going to hit you up Thursday morning and go, this is getting done today, right? You told me. I didn't say I want this done by this day. You told me. Why? Why did it not happen? I look for that because then I use what I pointed to earlier, my metrics. all right, well, this happened, this and how some of these things, traffic, weather, you can't predict that stuff, kind of, but not. So if my employee slipped, was this a problem with their issues and maybe I need to coach them on better prediction? Or was this something along the lines that could have been, was this a process issue or something like that? That goes back to continuous improvement. How do you improve this to reduce this chance my employee give me a bad date? It's not the employee's fault, because if I've given you the procedures, I've given you the instructions and stuff like this, maybe there wasn't enough time allotted. Maybe, you know, there was equipment issues. Maybe I need to look into that to reduce the chance of equipment breaking. Do I need another vendor? Do I need
Yep.
another machine? Do I need a backup? Do I need a backup there? There's all these little things. And I always tell people, if you have these mindsets of the continuous improvement and looking at and making your process repeatable and standardized, it's plug and play. Doesn't matter what you apply it to. You want to standardize your process, whatever you're doing, do it the same way every single time. What you need to ensure that you need to define. If you do that, you will get expected results. Good or bad, you'll get expected results.
Right.
It's, that's the most cost effective way to improving a business or going after growth. Or same thing, I went to Boeing to go for a contract. They said no. Well, why? Because I'm lacking these certain things, or that they didn't like how I was doing these certain things. So, as the owner, I look at the approach of, is this really worth my time changing all this? Just go for this one contract because it's only worth X amount of money. Do your ROIs, return on investment on anything. These are things you need to look at going into it. The rest of it's pretty much pretty easy after that. It's plug and play. I know it's like wow. I I
If
worked for a I worked for a company, commercial space. We were originally making one rocket at a time, and that's pretty much how most of the companies do it. When I was on the Delta Four and Atlas programs, it'd take us anywhere from 14 to 16 months to make one rocket.
Jeez.
When we started doing this down here in Southern California, we went from one rocket, then we started building two at a time, then three, then four, then five, then six. And then we're like, well, how do we make this faster? So we focused on efficiency. And then we got it down to 21 days from a slab of aluminum to a fully functional rocket heading out for proof testing for launch in three
Wow.
weeks. Nothing was done fast, not a single freaking thing. We were efficient. Some of that, of course, is automation. Some of that is more of put more bodies on it. But we always promoted efficiency. How can I do this the simplest way possible and keep the same results?
Right.
The problem is you can't charge for that. It comes out of your profits. So a lot of companies will do the same antiquated processes just because they don't want to take it out of their profit margins. For this company out of Hawthorne, California, we owned everything. We did everything in house. There was no board. It was just a really eccentric, goofy billionaire. Also owned a electric car company. So anything more than zero is good. So we put the money back into process, back into development, back into materials. We had a huge program there, and that's why I tell people all the time, promote this. And I've tried to do this to other companies. If you can save the company 10% time or money, we got what's called kick-ass awards. You got a $5,000 Visa prepaid credit card.
Wow.
This is a new startup rocket company. Everything can be improved. So you could also tell off the get-go who are the guys that I'm going to promote within because they're the ones going after. Yeah, it might be monetized, but at the same time, it's also the people who are going to jump at it to solve these problems.
Right.
Then we figured out how to land rockets, and that was a problem itself. So, and if you relate this back to same thing on the small business side, is always look for rooms for improvement for efficiency. Efficiency is not fast. Efficiency is smooth. Speed is a byproduct. So going
Mm,
back with continuous improvement and everything else, I'm stacking. If you hadn't noticed, if you do these things, you're able to identify where can I be more efficient at this, i.e., how can I make this easier for me?
right.
It might be paying somebody else to do it. It might be automating. It might be AI. It might be all these other tools, but you need to keep that mindset. Sometimes just make this easier and it will become faster. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. We're all taught this.
Gotcha. There's a lot you said in this time of sage, sage advice. It's just simple stuff that I like how you said it, and I like how you broke everything down as far as like, this is what I did, and I went here and went there and made sense. It's like, oh, just do that, and yeah, it makes sense. And then it's like, well, is it worth it for me to change things up for less money? No, the efficiency. It all ties together. I like how you broke everything down with clearly very analytical mind, an engineer. It's not me in that sense, but it's I see what you're doing to make things more
Well,
efficient.
the at the end of the day is how much of my effort is worth in any given thing, even yourself. Like, the one thing I always tell people is I've also learned is when you first start a business, you're wearing a lot of hats until you can afford to pay somebody to do that for you. So there for a long time, I was president, I was CTO, CFO, I was quality manager, I was all these things. And I used to complain about it. And my wife would be like, well, how much is it worth to you? You know, if you could have pay somebody to do this for you and it saves you an hour out of your day, how much is that hour of your day worth to you? Is it worth paying a salary of X amount a year?
You know what? You have a very good wife who likes to throw your shit back in your face. Well, if you're complaining about it, do it yourself. Well, if you complain about it, how much it's worth to you? She's a very supportive wife. Who's like, what the fuck are you doing? And you've been like, ah, that's a good point. Yeah, let me go back to the drawing board and come back to you.
Yeah, well, I used to have that thing. It's like, I really don't have time to focus on this one thing. I also don't have the money to pay somebody full-time status. How do I solve that?
Right.
1099.
Yep.
I know people who have a wealth of knowledge who have been doing this so long, they're ready to retire. But they also like the money. So I'm like, hey, I have this tasking that needs to be done X amount of times a month. I don't need you to work a 40-hour week, but if you could do this an hour of the week, how much is that hour worth to you? $100. I'm down to pay $100 an hour for somebody because it's only $100. But it's something that used to annoy me doing, I no longer have to do. Is that worth $100? All day. That's how I establish my labor rates. Simplest. I love to have an accountant full time. Who wouldn't?
Right.
Accountants are not cheap. Very good ones are
Well, they're money.
really expensive. But if I need you to do 2 hours of work every quarter, I would rather pay you for 2 hours of work every quarter. How much is your time worth then? 250 an hour? Okay, $500 every 3 months. I need to make sure I got $500 set aside every 3 months. That's not a huge ask.
Right.
So whether I break that down to a weekly or a daily or something like that, I know in 3 months I need to have $500 to give this person to do my books. Simplify your process, break it down to steps, continuous improvement, and make it efficient.
And the mic has now dropped. You're welcome, everybody.
I know.
Hey, to sum it up in this podcast, he just gave it to you. It's like that's what it is. That's what it is. But
You can apply this methodology to any industry, any process,
yeah.
anything. It's
Wow.
simple. But no one teaches that either. So it's
Yeah.
lessons learned.
No one sees that, but hey, well, dudes, you've dropped a lot. I'm gonna have to listen to. Okay, let me write some notes. That makes sense. Yeah, apply it to my own life. I
More than
appreciate.
happy for follow-ups, man. If anybody
Yeah,
has questions, feel free. I'm good.
good.
Yeah.
Man, thanks for being on. Is there anything else you want to share to people? You know,
Ah, there's gonna be moments, and I have them, and I still have them of this is I expected this to be here. I am here.
yeah.
There we go. Sorry. That bug is always going to be there. Well, I thought in a year from now I should be, having company number 7 going. But it the thing to keep in mind is keep in perspective. A lot of times I'd be like, fuck, I should have this lab open by now. And I've never really looked back from, August of 21 to see what all I've accomplished in this time and realize, you know, I've actually done quite a bit. Like, why am I beating myself up? Because in my brain, I should have been here, here, and here by my perspectives. This is where I should be. You lose track of that sense of this is everything I've accomplished in such a short amount of time.
I like that. I agree with that. It's about looking back at how far you come most of the time versus where you're at and where you're not at. Because that'll really kill your momentum. Be like, I suck. It's like, look at how far you've come. Hold on. The
Yeah,
path is the path. We can only control so much. It's gonna work its way out however it works out for you.
the
So
best the best business advice I ever got was if you ever want to completely lose control of something, start a business. Because once it takes off and it gets running, you're just herding cats at this point. It's going to go its direction, and you can steer it to like this much, even though your original plan was here. It's going to go. So good or bad, it goes. And yeah, that's really the biggest thing is I have ADHD, and it's a great superpower because I'm able to do multiple things at once without having to hyper focus on one single thing.
yeah,
So that's the best advice I give is don't always focus on what you haven't accomplished yet because this is where I thought I would be. Sometimes look back and see what you've done so far.
I like it.
It's pretty
Cool.
amazing. Cool. Yeah, on that. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. This is Joseph. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. If someone wants to get in contact with you, how should they reach out? How should they get a hold of you? I
Uh
It was like, we're done. Peace. It's like, how the fuck get a hold of this dude?
well, you got my email, so if anybody wants to reach out to you, hit you up. My company is the Full Wave Group, so it's website's pretty easy. The full FULL wave WAVE group GROUP.com. And then there's a contact us. Um, yeah, you could do it that way. LinkedIn, all that jazz, all that stuff's out there. Hit you up, essentially.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, heard it. You want to hire him? You should. All right, for whatever you need, wise. You heard it here. Cool. All right, appreciate you, man.
See you
Thanks.
later.